Hello everyone. The focus of today's webinar is to discuss the impacts of the COVID-19 coronavirus and what the impact that they're having on the employee experience and the importance of listening to our employees during this very critical time. Our panel today, we're lucky to have people here from DecisionWise. Let me just quickly introduce who we have on our panel. First off, we have Dr. Tracy Maylett, who is the CEO of DecisionWise. Thank you for being here, Tracy.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate the opportunity.
The president of DecisionWise, Matt Wride.
Good afternoon.
And our vice president of consulting services is Christian Nielson.
Hello.
And vice president of assessment services, Dave Long.
Hello, everybody.
So thank you all for being here. So Matt, can I just turn the time over to you and let us move forward?
Sure. Thanks, Justin. As we show up here, something so small has turned the world upside down, and we are living in a different environment, and it's a real challenge for leaders to figure out how to lead their employees when we're facing financial pressures as well as pandemic pressures. And all of a sudden, people who never expected to be working remotely are having to figure it out. So it is a challenge, and like we said, we're mindful of what you're doing, and we ourselves are feeling the pressure here at DecisionWise as well. It's interesting, in our database, we don't often have a chance to look at the external impacts that market conditions or other things have on how people respond to employee surveys. But we do now. And Christian, what have we kind of seen generally? I mean, it's not telling us anything significant, but it's kind of interesting, a few trends.
Yeah, we're doing some interesting research. We're trying to keep up on what the data can tell us about just some real unprecedented times, a very unique situation. One of the things we've noticed, and we're going to continue to do more research in this area, is that responses to items such as the level of stress in my job is manageable. The favorability has declined over the last couple of weeks as people are feeling the larger stresses. Matt, you mentioned economic and pandemic stress, and wondering if they have stability in their career, but also worried about people at home. All sorts of these things are combining, and we're seeing it in survey data that the scores have dropped consistently over the last few weeks on this item related to stress.
Enough that there's a clear slope to the pattern. So it was interesting. I'm going to turn this next concept or this next question over to Tracy, which is, what should we be doing?
You know, it's interesting. About a decade ago, ABC News went on patrol with U.S. General Stanley McChrystal, and they started patrolling a Taliban-infested area. It was very interesting. They asked him the question, in difficult times, what's changed about leadership and what's most important to you? And one of the things he did is he took them on patrol, and they basically, the area of patrol consisted of, they described it as chalky, thin alleyways of dust surrounded by high mud walls. And as they went on patrol, one of the things they asked him was, what do you need to understand in tough times? He made some quotes that I thought were very interesting. First of all, he said, if you don't do it, and he's referring to patrolling and understanding what's going on with the soldiers, he said, if you don't do it, you do risk forgetting exactly what the troops are doing or what they're going through. And it's important for me to look them in the eye and understand as best as I can what they're thinking. It's also important for them to have me do it. I realize this probably isn't the most dangerous foot patrol going on today, but the willingness to come out is important, I believe, to them. So one of the things I thought was interesting in the statements that certainly applies today is, during times of uncertainty, leadership, I'm not just talking about the CEO looking at his or her team, I'm talking about human resources, the supervisor, even peers, to understand what's going on. The rest of the statement was very interesting. He went on later to say, after this is one mission that failed in particular, and McChrystal shared, he said, I had to reach out to try to rebuild the trust of that workforce, rebuild their confidence, me and them and me, all without the ability to put a hand on their shoulder. And he went on to describe the most difficult experience he had was not being able to look a soldier in the eye or put a hand on that soldier on their shoulder and ask the question, how you doing? And so one of the things I want to make sure that we address today is the need to understand how we doing. and to be able to ask that question even in a remote environment. And I think many of the statistics and some of the concepts we'll share today really address that need to be able to ask the question, how are you doing in this time that, as Christian mentioned, particular stress?
That's right, Tracy. I love that story about General McChrystal, and it is a poignant reminder of the difficulty when you can't be with people, because we're in a people business. Christian, tell me about why you like this quote.
The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. I like this quote because, certainly we don't wish this current situation on the world, or certainly ourselves or any of our clients, that we've had to disrupt routine and leave stability. But there is an important truth in this quote, that there are opportunities even in these hardships. And some of those things, we want to focus on things to kind of mitigate risk and things like that, but we also want to look for opportunities. And I think one of the biggest opportunities right now is to demonstrate, to Tracy's point, to demonstrate that we stand by employees and to really live our values and create and reinforce those beliefs of the employees. As soon as we saw some of these changes, and the changes seem to come every day, that just the disruptions to our routines, employees are losing the ability to just operate off of muscle memory. We're not able just to follow along in the paths and just do our jobs with that the way we always have. Now we're on high alert. We have to think more to get things done. And we're also scanning the horizons for symbols that, we can relax, things are going to be okay, or people are panicking, I should panic too. And so the opportunities that I think we see, even in these challenging times, are really to demonstrate what type of employee experience we're committed to and how we value each other.
Dave, tell us about a couple of our clients and what we learned when they went through the California fires a few months ago.
I think we're looking around for examples in a long time. For a long time, we have not seen a worldwide issue such as this affect us. But in recent times, in the last couple of years, we've had a number of different localized disasters that we can look at and see how did really evolved, really strong organizations respond in those times, whether it be hurricanes, or in this case, I'm thinking about the fires that were happening in California. It happened in a number of different locations in California, and we worked with organizations as a consultancy. We worked with organizations that were dealing with some of those very difficult situations. In one case in particular that I'm thinking of, pretty much the entire city was burned down. I mean, and the headquarters of one of the organizations we work with worked in the city, and they did everything that they could during this time. Their employees were scattered. Some employees lost their homes. They were scattered all over the place. Was not business as usual. Things were shut down, and they did everything they could to check in with their employees, make sure that they were okay, extend leaves of absences where that needed to happen, and in essence show in every way that they were living up to their values, that they cared about their employees. And what we saw was not just a short-term impact. When we went back and surveyed that same population, we were fortunate enough to have before and after data, that it wasn't just a short-term impact, it was a long-term impact for them, where they're able to see this employees in this organization really found out how much the organization cared about them. Their engagement went up. They found, I don't know that they saw it as an opportunity or if it was part of their DNA, to just really care for their employees in a very difficult time. And so we saw a really positive impact as a result of a very difficult event where the organization was galvanized together. Employees were more committed than they'd ever been to the organization where they were working.
Tracy, sometimes it's in the hard times when our values are demonstrated the most.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's the time when you take those values off the poster on the wall and actually start living those values. One of our values here at DecisionWise is family. And one of the things we have to understand fully is that family extends to beyond our family. A family is the employee's family, or however they see that. And if we want to make sure that we're living our own values here, one of the things we have to understand is how they are seeing family and how they implement that value in their own lives.
And this question, Christian, this organization responds well during times of crisis. You have a client this week ready to push that question out. Is that right?
I do. I've discussed it with several clients. We had a number of clients that long before any of this news was so pressing that we were running surveys. We'd run them annually, and so they were in the works for a long time. And one of the ways they're trying to make this more timely and capture relevant information is including items like this. This organization responds well during times of crisis. There's other areas where we're doing some interesting things to try to essentially say, how are you doing, and understand their current situation. To the points Dave and Tracy just made, the memories people make during hard times or during these moments of emotional peak have a longer lasting power than business as usual. And so to Dave's comment that they had staying power, we saw the impact of these positive responses during those California fire crisis, and those stayed with people. People don't forget. And that's good and bad. They won't forget if you get this wrong, and they won't forget if you get this right. So let's focus on getting it right. And there's things to do in terms of keeping your surveys going and keeping channels open, which we'll speak to, but also looking for ways to augment it and make it more timely and ask questions that show that we're thinking about this and the experience that you're going through right now.
That's a really good point, because I've talked to a few clients. We're still talking to our clients right now, and I've talked to a few of them this week who are concerned about what this could do to their levels of engagement and things like that. And one client told me about how they've been working to improve communication over the last year, and they're worried. Well, what happens now? Everybody's remote. Everything's breaking down, and when we go to survey again, all these efforts that we've had to improve communication, we're sure we're doing better, we're lose all of that momentum. And my response to that is, and my response to anybody who would say that to me would be, no. It's been like a week since this has been a major issue in the U.S. at least. It's only been a week. Now's the time to start communicating. Now's the time to prove that all those channels that we set up and all those things that we've done in order to improve communication, now's the time to do it. And you won't just be hurting on you. There's a good chance that you won't hurt at all from this, at least from your employee perceptions. There's a good chance that you can move forward on it.
One of the things we're taught about basic physics is the concept and the idea that nature abhors a vacuum. And one of the things to understand is that on occasions like this where information may be missing, well, the employees are going to fill in that vacuum with misinformation. And so what we don't want them doing is inventing their own reality that isn't actually accurate. The more that we can communicate with them, communication being two ways. One is us communicating our thoughts and what's going on, and also receiving information back from them, the more effective we're going to be. And the likelihood of maintaining that employee experience in an appropriate way is going to be much higher.
I would also point out we don't survey to get scores. We survey to understand. Right. And we have to remember that that's our goal, is what is the experience that they are having right now. Let me jump ahead to a few other points, and I'd like to get your thoughts on how we need to change the tone in particular, and also the nature of the questions we use. And finally, if Tracy, you can talk about, I think, of the magic keys. We follow an acronym here at DecisionWise, MAGIC, meaning autonomy, growth, impact, and connection. Why connection is the most important right now. But Dave, could you comment on tone, maybe how we need to change tone and empathy right now, or increase empathy?
Yeah, I think it's the right time, and especially if I'm thinking about frontline managers who are, all their employees are remote. It's the right time to really try to understand what your direct reports are going through. Really trying to understand where are their thoughts taking them. They're alone in many cases. We have employees who live alone right now, who are in their homes by themselves, not as connected as they usually are. Here at Decision, we have this very friendly culture where people like to interact with each other throughout the day. We're losing some of that. And so the tone needs to be more of, hey, let me hear about your day. let me more of an empathy perspective. And honestly, most organizations can use more empathy anyway, but especially right now, a lot more listening.
And I think I would add to that if you're running your survey, there's a way to bring a little more humanity to it, just in being sensitive to the current tone, as well as if you're not, there's room to open up additional listening approaches to help. And a lot of those would be best served in text forms, the tone. If you're running one that's already structured, or you're planning on running it, or if you've got some pulse tools, we have a number of clients that we work with our pulsing tools, great times to run some of those and capture some of that employee feedback. Additionally, we're looking at ways to increase some of that empathy Dave's talking about, including focusing more on open text and not necessarily walking people through a lot of ranked items if it's not part of an already existing survey. And so we've got some things in the works that we're working to launch with clients to ask, how are you doing? And then how are you feeling? Yeah, what's this experience been like for you? And getting the full weight of their comments. It's also another opportunity in terms of, we analyze, in a typical employee survey, we analyze the data from a lot of different angles. We have all these ranked questions. We do advanced statistics, all these great things, which we'll continue to do, of course. But I think this is also an extra important time to focus on those comment questions. We do always include them in the piece, but right now especially, I think it's a good time to focus on understanding the emotion that will be found in those text responses.
Just to build off of that, to highlight the difference between how are you doing right now? Tell me about your experience right now. That's a question we can ask right now that would be more empathetic than the typical open-ended questions that we ask on a survey, which would be, tell me how to improve this organization. Tell me what's going well in the organization, whatever it might be. It becomes more personal, right? Tell me about your experience right now. Really trying to understand that. That's a really great question to ask right now.
Tracy, teach us about connection, if you would.
Yeah, connection is one of what we refer to, Matt, you mentioned this, the 5 magic keys: meaning, autonomy, growth, impact, and connection, which create engagement. Engagement being, hey, I have the desire to be part of this. Connection is a sense of belonging to something greater than yourself. A sense of connection can be a social connection, can be a connection to the organization, a task, the mission, but a sense of belonging to something. We here at DecisionWise are of course practicing the social distancing and the things that our governments have recommended. And with that, the 50 or so people that are in our headquarters building at any given time, one of the things we've asked them to do is practice working from home and social distancing along those lines. And it's interesting to me, most of the employees are doing this, but what's interesting is those who decide to come in once in a while. I had an interesting conversation a couple of days ago that really struck me about the power of connection. And as I was talking to these folks, I said, hey, you realize we want you to work from home. We hope you can work from home. Is there anything keeping you from doing this? And the conversation turned from logistics, which I thought it would be, to a different one, and that was the idea that connection. And one of the things I realized was, as they mentioned this very specifically, this is my social connection. Being with the people that I work with is my sense of society. It's my family. It is that social piece that I crave. So connection becomes particularly important for those that you may not see for the next 2 weeks. How do you keep that sense of connection and maintain that level of engagement?
After we kind of get through some basic points in this presentation, we're going to talk about some strategies as you hold virtual meetings to create that connection. So we understand you're going to have questions along those lines, and we're going to get there. I want to throw up just kind of some bullet points on what we think you should be doing as leaders. Listening to employees and other stakeholders, and then and obviously that's important, and we've touched upon that. But I want to talk about employee enablement. Christian, what do we mean when we use the term employee enablement?
Well, it's basically, are we setting employees up for success? Are we equipping them with all they'll need to be able to do their jobs? And so enablement might be tools and resources. It's training. It's clear expectations. And that's a very important thing. Always, we need to set people up so they can do their jobs. If we want the work done, we need to enable them to do the work. Now, at DecisionWise, we focus very much on kind of what we would consider a higher magnitude or another piece of this in terms of we assume enablement's in place. We want to focus on engagement. But we might simplify that even more and say enablement is, can they do their job? And engagement, if we drill that down into, simplify it into motivation, do they want to do their job? And do they want to do that here? And all those things. And so as we move people to a remote positions or remote work, then we have to think through enablement. Are we setting them up with the tools and resources, technology to facilitate it, the communication channels to stay in touch with stakeholders, bosses, or supervisors and coworkers, peers, and other internal dependencies, external counterparts, those types of things. Security becomes another consideration. All those things that aren't necessarily things that we consult directly on outside of, we need to make sure those needs are met so that people can get back and focus on the other things that engagement magic elements bring to drive the deeper level of connection to the work.
Dave, you worked on helping us with our onboarding surveys where we actually tried to measure enablement, and talk to us we've thrown some questions up here for people to use and maybe think about pulsing if they can. Talk to us a little bit about these questions, Dave, if you might.
Yeah, and you mentioned it in context of an onboarding survey. Well, in the context of an onboarding survey, you've got employees who've been here for 2 to 3 months, and those employees, we're trying to make sure that they have the resources, training, tools, everything that they need in order to do their jobs. Well, look at this as a similar situation. We're going into new territory for a lot of people who are working remotely for the first time. And so we want to be checking in to make sure. It's kind of like onboarding again, right? You're going outside the working outside of your normal office, and it's kind of like onboarding again. And so we want to make sure, these people that are there for the first time, and we want to be checking in probably very frequently right now to make sure that they have the tools, training, resources they need in order to do their jobs. That's an enablement question. Of course, we're always concerned about enabling our employees so that they have no impediments to do their work as normal. And as an organization, as HR, as leaders in the organization, really what you want to be focusing on is making sure those impediments are taken away.
Dave, I think we need to understand this also. We're talking about the employees, and we had a question come in along these lines that we'll address later on. But we also need to understand that many of the supervisors, many of the managers, this is their first time managing a remote workforce. And so we often don't even think along those lines of, yes, the employee needs this, but how do we educate that manager and that supervisor in working with a remote workforce? We'd like to address that a little bit later on in this webinar too.
What's the relationship between enablement and engagement, Christian?
Well, very connected. At the very tactical level, we need to enable people just to get the work done. But there's this other side of how we do that. If I give you everything you need, but it takes me 10 times as long as it should have, and I didn't communicate to you throughout the process, that's a very different experience. And so even the way we enable people can help prime them for engagement or disengagement. And so we also talk about satisfaction and engagement. There's transactional things we expect to be in place for us to just be satisfied in our work. And enablement, and a lot of those areas are aligned with this just basic satisfaction. And if those aren't in place, they become huge distraction. No matter how otherwise meaningful and the sense of impact and connection I have in my role, if I'm completely distracted because my computer won't turn on, or I don't have the right VPN to get into some kind of folder structure or something to do my work remotely, it doesn't matter how much meaning I have because I can't get the work done.
I think I'll add to that. People want to do their work right now. They don't want to be, they want to do their work right now. Make that assumption. Everybody wants to get their work done. And if they feel for whatever reason that they can't, because of some enablement factor that we're talking about right now, then it's going to be very hard for them to engage. I know it's weird to be thinking about that right now, but it's going to be very hard for them to see the other things that will help them engage if they are unable to get the work done that they want to do right now done.
I have a neighbor, a friend who's a doctor, and I've asked him how things are going, and he said, I have a guiding principle during times like this. I assume that everyone's doing their very best that they can.
Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
And that's your a little bit of your point is if we all make the assumption that everybody's doing the very best they can, our interpersonal dynamics will be will be so much the better.
Well, yeah, I think I used to work for an organization where their guiding principles was assume good intent.
Yeah.
And that becomes very important right now, where we have to trust each other. There's a new level of autonomy we have to give people when they go remote. Autonomy, one of the 5 keys Tracy mentioned, that and it might test what we're comfortable with as an organization, as leadership, as HR professionals, those types of things. But that assume good intent, trust people are doing their best, I think is a good concept to think through.
Matt, I want to put you on the spot here for just a second. A couple years ago, you and I wrote a book called The Employee Experience, and in that we coined a term, the age of the employee. And basically the concept of the age of the employee was we put the employee at the center of everything we do. The employees now have a degree of control they've never had in the past. Do you believe that this has changed? Is this different now? And will it change in the future? And what do we need to be aware of as far as the age of the employee going forward?
That's a tough one. I think it's early to say whether there's been a major shift, but I don't think we should assume it has. I think we should, in moments like this, we are about each other, and so we may look back, you and I, in research, and we may make a comment in a year and talk about that in some keynote. But I think what both you and I and those at this panel want to tell everybody is it is the age of the employee right now more than ever.
Right.
But it will change, but it won't, because the ability for employees to be remote and mobile and transitory, those things are all still part of our economy.
Right. I agree.
Connection. This is we've been spending some time and emphasis on connection, and I think this picture's kind of funny because it's like the ultimate way to touch in a COVID-19 world, fingertips only. Let's go to some of the questions we use to try to measure connection or understand it. Christian, talk us through a few of these, and we've got a few more to talk about.
Yeah, so connection, especially in the context of people being remote, becomes very important in keeping people connected to Tracy's comment of a sense of belonging to something greater than oneself and something bigger than themselves. These are some of the survey items related to connection. I'll just point out a few. Some are at the team level, some are at the supervisor level, some are at the organizational level. Do you have 2 slides of this, Matt?
This one.
I might jump to the next one even for a moment here. The last one that's highlighted is one that's very important. It's often a statistical driver of engagement when we do deeper analysis. I feel like I belong here. You might even think that we're building engagement, but we're building belonging, and engagement comes when we feel like we belong. Connection is very important. Now, even thinking through a connection at the different levels, it's one thing to be connected to my manager, feel connected to my team, and those are good things. But we also need employees to feel connected to the organization. And we can do that at the top of the organization. We can help create a compelling value proposition and communication to help invite people to be part of what we're doing as an organization. But we also need to rely on managers to help connect those dots. And especially during remote times like this, when we're manager is seen as a trusted guide or leader of their team, we need the manager not only to help manage that team experience, but also to connect employees back to the organization, to say, yes, I lead a team here at DecisionWise of consultants, and I need them to feel good about our team experience and comfortable there, but I also need them to feel connected to the larger DecisionWise vision. And I, as a manager, need to help them feel part of the greater organization.
I think a lot of managers right now, a lot of organizations forget that focus on the manager right now. We're looking at the employees en masse, which is great, but we also need to be focusing on how do we make sure those managers are making that connection still and making that happen. So one of the things I'd invite you to do, that attendees are on the webinar, is take a look at the managers in your organization, and are we providing them with the tools they need to, including how do we work with the remote workforce, as well as how are you as a manager? How are you doing? Well, what can I do to help you? And I think we're forgetting the managers.
I think it's a great point. And one thing we've been talking a lot about the work we do in employee engagement, and how we're working with our clients to kind of manage and keep to timelines and create the right experience. The other big part of our services really focuses on individuals, and that piece is busier than ever, where we're working with more individual one-on-one managers and 360 and coaching and things. And I hope that continues as organizations continue to put a focus on managers and not lose sight of that.
Yeah, some of the latest research that we've been focusing on, and you'll see a lot more coming from our organization on this, is when we talk about engagement we'll describe in more depth later on, but the idea that an employee is engaged more by what happens with that relationship with the manager than with the organization. So when we run, for example, an employee engagement survey, a lot of times the top 8 people will sit on in the top of a room on the 41st floor and make decisions about the organization's engagement, when in reality what we find is it's the manager who has the most impact on that person's engagement. Engagement is local. That applies even in situations of today where we're working remotely. The managers do have that ability to provide that invitation to engage.
Thank you, Tracy. So as we prepare to kind of finish this section of the presentation, we also, as an HR leader, you need help in the communication areas and consider how you're supporting your organization's communications efforts, and also take the time to make sure it's working. For example, is the flow of information in my organization, is it quick and effective? Or, take the time to understand, are our communications efforts working? Any thoughts there, Dave?
Yeah, I think one thing to remember is that your informal communication channels are shutting down right now. The
water cooler.
Yeah, well, water cooler, hopefully the water cooler shuts down. But also the informal manager gets back from a meeting, sees their team sitting there and says, "Hey, team, this is some of the things that I just heard, in the meeting." So those collisions that we have on a day-to-day basis that help us to get things done, they're going away. Maybe view this as an opportunity with communication. Maybe it's time to set up some formal communication, deliberate communication in the organization that we can carry through even after this crisis is over. There's a really good argument to set up strong channels for communications, frequent check-ins with managers, to your point, Tracy, with employees right now, that we'd be able to carry through even after we get back, so that we can rely less on that informal kind of those collisions that we have on a day-to-day basis and rely on more deliberate communication going forward.
Let's remember that communication is a two-way process. We're talking right now about the top-down communication, saying here's what's going on, it's okay, here's what's happening. But one of the things that I'm noticing is, and my phone has been busier this week than it has for a long time, and it's individuals at senior levels in organizations that are calling and saying, "Hey, I want to share an experience with you." What we're seeing right now is employees are coming up with some really interesting ideas of how we pull out of this. And some of those managers, some of those executives have been able to take these ideas and shift the direction of their business because these employees are on the front line. So when we talk about communication, understand that this is an opportunity to build something in the future that will allow you to receive upward communication that may not have existed before.
Dave, as we are in a more formal way of communicating, say you're running a virtual meeting or a remote meeting, it's interesting. You're going to need to spend time building space to have those informal check-ins where you go around the room and you say, "How was everybody's day?"
Right.
Or you say, "Hey, I want to give everybody 1 minute to talk about what's going in their lives personally," and you go first to model the behavior. You're going to have to bring the water cooler to these virtual meetings because, as you said, everything we've relied on intuitively is kind of gone.
So Matt, really fast, a lot of the people who are on the call are in HR or in different functions like that. How can they use these concepts and get them out to the managers? What are some ways that they can, give these ideas to the managers to empower them? What ideas might you have with that?
One of my favorite things is this is a great opportunity to just stress that communication is a core competency of being a manager. Often we promote someone because they're a super individual contributor, and we forget to tell them, hey, one of your main job responsibility is cascading information to and from the employees. And just using the current situation as a way to stress that, create a clear expectation. And then I think, Justin, where you're asking some tactical things, it depends on the organization, what you've got and things like that. But, one of the things I've heard Dave talk about, especially in manufacturing, is something called communication moments. Anytime there's a meeting, and we got this from our manufacturing clients, because often in manufacturing or some of the utilities and things, they'll have safety moments before a meeting. And it's a great practice where you share a safety example or story at the beginning. Well, Dave, I've heard him talk to his clients about communication moments. You're doing these safety moments. At the end of a meeting, have a communication moment. This is what every one of us needs to share with your team after this, and actually creating a dedicated time for this. As well as look for ways you can actually bake that habit in for listening. Once a week, I want you to have at least 3 touch points with all of your employees, or put a number on it. That helps. Listening, and I'm running long on this one, but I'm going to just point back. Listening is highly correlated to some really interesting areas in our survey. If we want to understand what makes employees feel cared for, often we'll see items where employees feel heard are correlated with that. If we want to see when we get confidence in the abilities of senior leadership, it's often if I feel like they're listening to me, then I feel like they know what they're doing, which is kind of a funny way to put that. But we don't want to lose that. And so looking for real examples. The other piece I'll put, and this is going to be unique to every organization, is look for bright spots. Who's getting it right? Are there managers that seem to have the special touch? They're staying in touch with all of their people. Study those folks. What are they doing, and what can you learn and share with other managers within your organization?
One of the kind of a fun idea that I'll throw out there just as a bit humorous is we can't do it well. We might be able to do it a little bit in today's environment, but it said hold a virtual pizza party. Everybody orders a pizza pie in, and you're eating it together on video.
Let's do that tomorrow.
But
Have the pizza man deliver the pizza, walk away, and then grab your pizza.
This message brought to you by DoorDash. That's right.
That's right.
Before we jump into the questions, we do want to point out that you have influencers, hidden influencers we call them sometimes. Make sure you've thought about who these people are, and that in the same way that we've encouraged you to reach out to your managers to strengthen and nourish them, find your influencers and figure out who they are and enlist their help.
Right. Leverage your I like to say leverage your org structure through those manager communication, but don't forget your organic structure. You have communication nodes that just are personal influencers. They're not necessarily by title, but people gravitate and trust them, and leverage them as they share and help make sure that they've got the information to share with their networks.
And don't assume you know who these are. I mean, when we research and run surveys to find out who they are, and HR's like, no, that's not right. No, that's who it is.
There's often surprises.
I stole this meme, but if the Brady Bunch can do virtual meetings, so can we.
That's pretty good.
The very first to do it, back in 1970. So, Justin, we're ready now for some of your questions and then to take the audience's questions.
Yeah, so we appreciate those questions that have already come in, and we welcome you. If there are questions that you have for the panel, please continue to bring them in. As a reminder, this webinar will be available on demand on the Bright Talk channel, as well as the DecisionWise website, and it will be available through the audio will be available through the Engaging People podcast that DecisionWise runs, also found on our website or through your podcast network. So a couple of things that have come in, maybe we can talk about and relates to a couple of questions relate to this. But with the remote workforce, we have issues of productivity. So maybe let's address the elements of productivity. And then, Tracy, maybe even throw in a little bit about growth with this, right? Because when you're working remote and you don't have that social connection going, you realize how much of your day is socially connecting with people. And when you're at home, you're like, okay, now what might I do, right? So how do we one, control that productivity? And two, where does that come in with how do we continue to grow as employees? So I'll throw it out there to whoever wants to jump in first.
I'll start out by just saying, you might have to change a little bit of the way, or managers might have to change a little bit of the way that they manage. If there's a manager that focuses more on kind of the day-to-day process that people go through in order to get results, that's not going to be a luxury that they have right now. So right now, I think you have to start by really understanding what are the outputs that I'm looking for from my team, and really focus on getting quality outputs from the team. So rather than focusing on process, because you can't watch people do their work right now, you have to be asking for deliverables, and then checking in on those deliverables to make sure that's really where the focus is. What's your deliverable? Is that getting done in the right way or in an appropriate way? That's less in terms of what you can check on right now, but really focus on what is the deliverable, and is it a quality deliverable? And if it is, then we're not worried so much about the process that they took in order to do it.
And I think there's a team activity you could do. We might call it team job crafting, but right now you could hold a virtual meeting for an hour and answer these 3 questions. What's our strategic contribution to the organization? What are we good at? What do we want to be good at? What are we good at? Our aspirations and capabilities. And then let everyone chime in on how they can contribute in this new era to meeting those objectives. So it's what you're saying, but we can also reach down and say, hey, we can figure this out together, right?
Let's talk a little bit about, one of the questions was about reinforcing values during a crisis. Should we only reinforce those values about caring for people, or what about the other values as well?
Depends on what the values are, you know.
Yeah, if your values are touching your face or bear hugs, do not reinforce those right now. But I think for the most case, you want to make sure that it's easier to lean into those. Like, so one of our values internally here at DecisionWise is care and family. We've got those elements. Those are natural ones for us to highlight now, but we can't do that at the expense of our other values. You know, I think there's some that are going to be more logical to highlight and celebrate and bring to the forefront in our behaviors, but you've got to make sure that you're not violating any of the others. So another one of ours is authenticity. That's not necessarily a flagship thing that we're all on our mind right now, but we don't want to do anything to completely lose that part of our identity or violate that piece of who we are.
But you could challenge your team to say, let's do great work. Let's see what we can do. Let's again, the obstacle being the way, what can we do as a team to really show that this isn't going to stop us? Challenge people to rise.
Yeah, now is not the time for any form of hypocrisy. It's not the time for that. It's the time for every single one of your values. Whatever you said is important. Those are the things that we're reinforcing right now. And so to use DecisionWise as an example, another one of our values is drive. Yeah. We have the drive to perform. We have the drive to help our clients. Everything that is something that's just as critical right now as the other values that we've been talking about.
Well, as you go down the list of our values, one of them is expertise. Right. And one of the things we looked at a little bit earlier this week, and Justin, kudos to your team to pull this webinar together, the idea that how do we share what we know about this with the world, that expertise that exists, and challenging our people to write about some of the things that they're experiencing, that's expertise. Justin, I want to make sure I tackle the growth question, because that's one on my mind right now.
Perfect. Let's go for it. We did kind of skip over that. Sorry.
And the reason, no worries, but it's that's my baby that I'm excited about right now. And part of the reason that is as I look at what this has done to our personal business over the last little bit, our business has shifted, and that's been primarily focused on organizational engagement. Now what we're seeing is a lot of one-on-one work that's probably more prolific than it has been in the past. And what I mean by that is working one-on-one with an individual manager or coaching and things like that. So what this has really helped me understand over the last little bit is you look at a normal day at the office. How many times do you pass each employee? Or how many times do you see an individual? 5 times, 10 times? Well, that's a normal day's interaction. And if we wait for 1 to 2 weeks to have that same level of interaction with an individual, they're missing a lot of information. So what I'm proposing here is that take this opportunity to schedule very, very specific one-on-ones with individuals, and during that time you can have the growth conversation that maybe you may not have had time to have previously or that didn't normally exist. Those growth conversations can be individual coaching conversations to where you take the time. We refer to, again, going back to the book, we refer to what's referred to as Kairos moments and Chronos moments. A Chronos moment is those moments that are planned for. It's onboarding, it's appraisals, things like this. These are part of the normal scheduled timeline. But the other moments, the Kairos moments, which actually means in the moment, is the concept of we have the opportunity now to really sit down with the employees and say, no, let's talk really about what's important to you and have the one-on-one coaching conversations. But those will not happen unless they're very intentional. It doesn't happen remotely unless they're intentional.
If I were an HR leader, I would be trying to get as many best practices and tips to managers as I could on, put up a bullet point list of ways to conduct a virtual meeting. Get that in their hands. We think people connect the dots, but they don't. And our job is we can give them some basic tips to help understand how to do some of these things, like take time, or one of the things that's often difficult is preparing for a meeting. So the manager should plan 2 meetings. Plan 30 minutes before the meeting, put it on people's schedule, they prepare, and then hold the real meeting 30 minutes after. And those little things you can do create rhythm and structure. To Dave's point earlier, we've been able to rely on kind of social norms that have been built for hundreds of years. Now we're going to have to be more deliberate in our approach about creating a rhythm that we control and we keep going.
But going back to your, one of the earlier slides that we showed, it essentially said that, finding opportunity during challenges, that is one of the real opportunities. This is a major disruption across the entire world. And during disruption, we have malleability for change, where people might have been a little more resistant if we just said, hey, you need to up communication. Yeah. Now we have a real case for it, and people are in a state of flux where we might be more receptive to some of these things. So one of the opportunities here is to bake in more of these best practices, to nudge the culture in a direction that we want it to head.
As organizations weathered the 2008, 2009, 2010 recession, one of the things that they would come to us, and one of the survey questions that we often ask is about growth opportunities. We actually have several questions on that. And we had a number of companies that were coming to us that said, during this crisis, how can we provide growth opportunities? And one of the things we realized when they were talking about growth opportunities, they were talking about promotion. And as we talked to the individuals, growth opportunities was not putting a senior in front of my manager title. Really, growth opportunities was the chance to be stretched beyond our current comfort zone. This is one of those opportunities to formally stretch or informally stretch individuals beyond their comfort zone.
Great. Thank you. There have been some really good questions that have come in, and one that I want to address is we've been talking a lot about remote workers and those who have had the ability to work remote. There are several industries, and we have several clients who it's completely the opposite, actually, where it's all hands on deck and everybody needs to be working, or they don't have the ability to work from home. How do you address the needs of those people? Because obviously, Christian, you talk a lot about workplace safety, and in their mind, is it safe? And how do I address those of whether it's in healthcare or manufacturing or some of these industries where working from home isn't an option right now?
Right, and I think just having that awareness, that's the biggest hurdle up front. Just being aware that people are scared, and we don't all have the luxury of working from home. I mean, all of us here are in the office today, and I know that we feel comfortable with that. But let me actually use DecisionWise as a good example. One of the things here that I noticed happened very quickly is we saw lots of hand sanitizer dispensers go up on the wall. Now, I know that's a scarce world commodity right now in terms of hand sanitizers has exceeded the price.
We're going to need to post guards tonight, aren't we?
That's right. It's beyond the gold standard now. But that did two things. One, it cut down on germs because people are using those. That's a great thing. But there's a real powerful symbolic impact there. For those of us who have to work here, we know the organization is watching and concerned about those things. We're taking steps. And that's just one of the things that we're seeing, even here inside our own walls. And so where we have those, be aware of possible distractions or things that might symbolize in people's minds that it's we're not cared for, or anything that might be misconstrued as a message. I mean, you communicate with your employees in countless ways with the physical environment of the organization, with your policies, with what you are saying, what you're not saying. And just be aware of that they're looking, people are scared, and anything you can do to create a sense of safety, even though I don't think employees are expecting you to solve this disease in your within your walls. But they are looking for you to care and do what you can do.
In the case of a manufacturing facility and having a set of employees that could go home and a set that probably need to stay, one thing is when you communicate a decision, it's also important to communicate how that decision was made and why that decision was made. And it's okay to ask people to buy in. I mean, in other words, if you're going to ask your administrative employees to stay, you need to tell them why, and ask them to help you, as opposed to just being kind of push and command and control. Make them a part of the solution. But if you don't have a good reason, send them home, because that's what we're supposed to do.
Let me just say also, we talked about making sure everybody is enabled to do their work, having the tools and resources they need to do their work. If they are needing to come into the office or into a manufacturing facility, what are the tools and resources that they need in order to feel safe? So is it masks? Is it gloves? Can we provide those to people? Can we provide them with social distancing? Can we provide a 6-foot bubble around those people so that they can, keep their distance from other people, to the extent that it's possible, for you to provide some of those things that do help people feel safe at work. I think that's something that you can look at.
Yeah. I'm glad you said the social distancing, because I forgot to say that we're in a bigger room this time, so we can all be spread out.
6 feet apart.
Our normal webinar room would not be a place to do 6 feet.
I don't think there's 6 feet in that whole room.
So that's great. A couple of other questions, and Dave, maybe let's go to you on this one. So how frequently should we be asking the question, how are you feeling today? Now, I'm assuming this was asked in terms of a survey type question, because obviously I want to ask you personally, how are you feeling? There's really no limit to that. But if we were surveying our employees, how frequently should we be checking up with them on that? Put you on the spot.
Yeah,
Sorry.
put me on the spot a little bit there. I'm a believer that you don't want to over-survey, but having said that, getting together a very quick survey to reach out to all of your reach out to all of your employees right now is an important thing, right? So getting together something so you have data from the entire organization to try to understand what the general mood is, the general temperature is in the organization, and also to hear some of those things and be able to show some empathy back to the organization. I think getting that together right now and maybe trying to, depending on how long this lasts, where everybody is remote, trying to duplicate that effort. But you don't want to do it every day. You don't want to do it every week. But if you can get something together as quickly as you can, that would be useful.
I think we were thinking, Dave, maybe get one out soon, next week too. We're working on that and trying to get one that's not got a lot of impediments to getting it out. We're not going to worry a lot about hierarchies and things. We just want to get this out. But then in 90 days is really, I think, where we were thinking would be an ideal sweet spot.
Yeah, and I think you start with a plan like that. I think that feels, with all the information right now, that feels like the right mix. We'll get something soon and simple. Get some with the right tone of empathy and helping employees feel heard. Plan on following up 90 days. If the condition goes on for a lot longer, then reevaluate and look at cadence and things like that. But now in 90 days is what we're looking at.
And you could sample, so you could do a subset and be more frequent, but then you're not touching everybody every time.
Size of the company and distribution, those types of things matter for that.
I want to also talk about an opportunity to break some rules here, go outside of the conventions. The typical conventions, I teach at a university, and one of the things that I've found very impressive that I'm seeing from the administration is that normal communication row of asking for feedback. They've broken that down to where you can now give comments to somebody other than your direct supervisor. So for example, as I teach, I'm asking my students to talk to me instead of talking to the TAs or talking to somebody else. What I'm suggesting here is that same thing can apply in the workforce. This is an opportunity to maybe go outside of what the established norms were. Senior managers can ask these questions. Employees can talk to senior managers or executives where maybe that was part of the rule that couldn't be broken before. Now's an opportunity to break those communication barriers, including a CEO or an executive sending out an email asking, how am I doing? What's going on right now? How's the organization working?
That's great. Let's maybe just talk a little bit about one of the questions came in that is in this vein about how frequently we should ask the questions. And Matt and you, Dave, you and Matt talked about get something out right now. Interestingly enough, there was a question that maybe fits more to my team than to your teams, but what recommendations on tools are there to go out quickly and affordably? Matt, you want to take a first stab at this one?
We believe that the best survey design is open text, but that said, you need good analytics behind it. You need a good machine learning model to help understand sentiment. And so I would love to say, run a quick survey with any survey platform you have. And if you do, you're going to have to wade through the comments. But if you can partner with someone that's got some artificial intelligence sitting behind text analytics, then you're going to be better off.
That's the vision that we're having right now, is that, if you've got some current surveys planned, great. And pay special attention to the text piece. Otherwise, a simple survey like Matt's talking about with a nice message from the organization about, hey, this is a unique time for all of us. We're concerned about all of our employees. Please give us some time to give us your feedback. One question, how are you doing? And then using some text analytics to really process that for especially large employee populations, but also wade through it, read it all. Feel the human emotion of it. But that's what we're looking at in terms of a simplified, modified approach to get something out quick, get something out that's meaningful, tone correct, and get some good data in.
I want to throw out a business-oriented survey too. So what we're talking about is keeping in mind how the employees are doing. But this is an opportunity also to throw out and ask for feedback about, all right, so what ideas are you seeing to improve the business during this time? Are there lines that we haven't tapped? Are there places we need to be looking right now? So to be able to gather business-specific or operational feedback is also one of the advantages of doing a survey.
That's great. We'll take just a couple more questions that we have here, and then we'll finish up. But we really appreciate the questions that are here. One that just came in that I think has some interesting parts to it is the economy. You watch the markets, you watch everything going on, and you feel hopeless at times. And people are seeing that business has a potential to be decreasing, and they start worrying about their jobs and all of these external factors that are there as well. What thoughts or advice would you give surrounding this?
I don't think businesses can make bad things go away, but I do think they can tell the truth. That's my point. We can't stop bad things from happening, but we can show good leadership.
That's great.
Yeah, and Tracy earlier in the conversation talked about the nature abhors a vacuum, right? So if we don't, be wary of what you are saying to employees and what you're not saying, and how silence is perceived. If there's a lot of things happening and they're not hearing messages from senior leaders, from their managers, a lot of times they'll assume the worst. Oh, we're not hearing because they're going to do reduction in force, or we're not hearing because our clients have all dried up, or versus if you just tell them the news, often it's not as bad as what they were imagining. So to Matt's point, we can't change we can't influence the external environment as much as we'd like, but we can tell the truth and have authentic conversations.
That's great. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today and answering these questions. And I want to thank everyone, again, who is on the call with us. Thank you for what you are doing for your organizations, for your employees. You are on the front line of helping to build and create and manage and work with that employee experience. So we support and appreciate what you're doing, and please know that whatever DecisionWise can do to help you in this time, please know that we're here. We want to be a support to you. Hopefully this has been a valuable resource to you. Again, it will be available on the DecisionWise website, our Bright Talk channel, and the Engaging People podcast. Thank you very much.